So there's a very weird and odd report that's actually been going around recently that does suggest that James Wiseman is, of course, being traded. And that's not necessarily the weird and odd part of the report, more so that the Miami Heat are actually one of the teams that is interested in acquiring him, and this is all being reported by Kevin O'Connor. And I'm going to admit, as someone who had James Wiseman's back for so long on Golden State, I think it is time to kind of acknowledge that his value has really plummeted in the NBA. Like, it is not that great at all at the moment. I mean, if people are saying he's only worth a couple of seconds, you're just completely wrong. His value is not that low yet. I would still say he is a first round pick for sure. I mean, we can't put that much disrespect on the guy. He was a former number 2 overall pick. It's just that he hasn't played in so long. Like, I was one of those guys that said, look, just because he had a really, really bad first season doesn't mean you can call him a bust. For example, Darius Garland was a guy who pretty much jumped straight from high school to the NBA. He played in high school, did really well, was recruited to many different colleges, of course. Again, he ended up picking his college, played 5 games there before deciding to take season-ending surgery. Then, because he pretty much, it was only 5 games, there wasn't a whole lot in it, and it was so early in the start of the season, he pretty much just jumped straight from high school to the NBA draft. So, of course, he was going to have a really, really rough first year. But, of course, as we know, after his first year, some people called him the worst player in the NBA, and they were saying this about a 19-year-old that still legitimately averaged, 15 points per game or something, whatever he did in his first year. I don't think it was as much as 15, but again, his defense was possibly the worst in the NBA. He had a lot of inconsistencies about his game, but he definitely wasn't that bad. Then his second year, of course, he turned into a really solid player with a lot of upside, and even had, I think, 2K, basically putting him as the same overall as Colin Sexton when the new game came out. Then, of course, we know in his third season, he would become an all-star, the face of Cleveland, some might even say the face of Cleveland sports, and nearly led them to their first playoffs, since LeBron left. And I felt like that was what was going to happen with James Wiseman. His first year was going to be called a bust. Everyone was going to be talking about how bad he was, and it was pretty much going to be a similar situation where he kind of just jumped from high school to the NBA. But then we know his second season came around and he didn't have that fairy tale like Darius Garland did. In fact, he never played a game this season. And you might be like at home, well, that was because he was injured, all of this type of stuff, right? Well, yeah, he was injured for about, I would say, a third to half of the season. Then, the next half of the season, he played a lot of G League, trained with the G League team, did all that type of stuff, and the Warriors just flat out refused to play him. Look, I know he wasn't fully healthy at times, but you can't tell me he definitely wasn't fully healthy towards the end of the year. The Warriors knew what they had going on was so good that maybe putting in a James Wiseman would kind of hurt what they were doing at that time. So they just never played him. James Wiseman didn't play a single minute this season. And now that's left the question of a lot of people, asking, is he a bust? And just people flat out calling him a bust. I don't think he's a bust. I just think it was a bad pick by the Golden State Warriors. And I said this on draft night, that drafting James Wiseman would be a mistake because I didn't think he would fit into their system. So you're better off going off with LaMelo Ball, who would, again, be a future star for them. And of course, LaMelo Ball is already a star in the NBA and the face of the Charlotte Hornets, while James Wiseman is literally being chosen to not play. So, again, I think that James Wiseman could be good for the Golden State Warriors, but I don't think that James Wiseman wants to be the player that they want him to be. They literally took a player at pick 2, hoping he could do exactly what Kevon Looney's doing now, by setting 100 different screens a game, potentially getting a board, and just really doing that. That's all they want from their big man. But James Wiseman wants to be a scorer. He wants to prove himself doing other things, and I don't think he's going to get that on the Golden State Warriors. And I just think it's unfair for some people to be calling him a bust, considering I think it was flat out maybe a mistake by the Warriors, and he hasn't actually been given a chance basically to do what the Warriors want him to do anyway. For like, the Warriors want him to be what maybe like a much better Andrew Bogut, a much better Kevon Looney, but they're not even giving him the opportunity to do so. And I mean, it's fair enough to them. They just won a championship. They didn't need to. Maybe they were right. He probably would have come in and maybe ruined it a little bit. But at the end of the day, the Warriors are still choosing not to play James Wiseman, and now he's up for trade. And the Miami Heat are interested, and I also don't think the Miami Heat are the right team to be going out and getting James Wiseman. I think what the Miami Heat are doing is they have a plan right now to move Bam to the 4 and bring in an actual center. The reason they want to do this is because they're typically caught using Bam to play, to guard forwards like maybe a, Giannis, a LeBron James, etc. And then when the other team's center, for example, if you were to put Bam on like a LeBron, then you still got to look at Anthony Davis, right? And then you would assume that if he would go to Anthony Davis, then maybe Butler would go to LeBron or something like that, right? That would be an easy fix for the Lakers. But when it comes to the Bucks, it's a different story. You have to put, Bam on Giannis, and then JB automatically goes to Chris Middleton, and then they're really exposed at that center position because you've got players like PJ Tucker guarding, like Milwaukee Bucks centers like Bobby Portis, and it just doesn't work. And that's the case. It happens to them to a couple teams out there, and it hasn't worked. And I think the idea of playing Bam at the 4 is actually a really interesting one that I'd like to see. But I don't think James Wiseman is the center that you need to bring in. In my opinion, they should go for Mo Bamba. I think what they need to do is bring in an inside interior defensive center that can, hit the 3 ball and still space the court out. And that's what I think Mo Bamba does. Mo Bamba's a really good interior shot blocker that you're not relying on him to score at all. That can just be a dude that still spaces the floor. I think that would be a really, really good one. And by I mean not relying on him to score, I mean like be a shot creator, right? James Wiseman wants to be a shot creator. His 3-point percentage isn't that great. He's not a very good 3-point shooter. He's more of a mid-range dude. Could grow, I think, into being a really good interior defender, but I think he'll be more of an interior scorer in the NBA, which I don't think is what the Heat necessarily really need. So when you look at James Wiseman, there are so many teams out there that could trade for him, and as I said, I just don't think the Miami Heat is one of them. As I said, Miami, they need that 3-point shooter, because we know when it came to the playoffs, they could never get back into the games because their 3-point shooting was just so bad. You've got Tyler Hero basically being the only consistent 3-point shooter. You've got a PJ Tucker who just couldn't hit a 3 in the conference finals. You've got Duncan Robinson who doesn't get on the court anymore because he's hot garbage. Jimmy Butler has never been a consistent 3-point shooter really in the predominant part of his career. And Kyle Lowry, very similar thing, is not really a good 3-point shooter anymore. Neither is Victor Oladipo. The list can literally go on. But if you bring in Mo Bamba, you bring in a center that not only spaces out the floor, but can actually guard the opposing team's center now, especially when Bam Adebayo goes to guard a player like Giannis, That's what they need to do, and I think it would be a really good thing. I think Mo Bamba fits into their team so well, and he is the center they should be going after, not James Wiseman. James Wiseman, look, will probably fit that interior defensive thing that I'm sure Mo Bamba is very similar at. But he won't space the floor out for you. Again, I think he will eventually develop into one of those guys that shoots a couple threes per game. But it's similar to Anthony Davis. He'll shoot a couple threes, but he'll always be like 30 to 33% from 3. And he'll just never be known to be like a good catch and shoot type player for at least the time being. I think he needs to stick to that mid-range game and inside scoring, and he's not going to be able to necessarily do that in the Heat. The Heat already have a ton of inside scoring. They don't necessarily need another guy to come in and do that. So that's why I just don't like this move at all. And I'm kind of hoping they stay away from it. If they were to, of course, do it though, you would probably have to trade up I think a couple of things. For example, you would have to match that $10 million contract. I'm not too sure who the Warriors would really want from the Heat. I'm sure they could find a player. But most importantly, it would be, I think, a first-round pick. Especially from the Heat. You're probably not going to want to protect it first from them. You know they're going to be a good team. So you're going to want a first-round pick. And I think that gets the deal done. Again, his value isn't extremely high, but he's definitely not a couple second-round picks or just a basic role player like some people are saying. Still got to trade a first for him. He's still, again, a former second-round pick that could have tons of upside in the NBA. So still got to be very careful with that. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys think the Miami Heat should, of course, trade for James Wiseman, or do you guys think they shouldn't? Of course, I would definitely like to know. Don't forget to subscribe to my IRL/flowing channel and my gaming channel. All of them will be linked in the description down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.